Welcome to the fourth overview of Iara's Crossing. My name is Diana Pomeroy. I'm an artist, I'm an author, and I'm an educator at several community colleges in Southern California. And in this video, I'm going to share this character, Clepsydra's backstory with you. Clepsydra is avian dinosaur, kind of like Archaeopteryx, very similar to that type of dinosaur. I'm going to share with you exactly who this character is in relation to Iara. I'm going to share with you how this character came to be. And just as a heads up, this character is just as old in terms of her history as Iara is. So this character originated in really the 90s for me when I was writing stories as a kid. So if you'd like to know more about this story, about this novel, Iara's Crossing, that I wrote and published this year, I highly encourage you to check out my Indiegogo. The link to the Indiegogo page is in the description. I appreciate all of the contributions made towards this project so far. I really appreciate it. And Iara's Crossing is a dinosaur fantasy novel. So basically, it takes aspects of dinosaur paleontology and merges it with elemental-based fantasy. And Clepsydra's backstory especially touches on this concept quite a bit. So let's learn more about this character that we learn about in the prologue to Iara's Crossing and who serves a prominent role throughout this story. So Clepsydra's character begins as this dinosaur character, actually. This dinosaur character was Gluchon. It was actually based on a dinosaur toy that I had growing up as a kid. This was actually the first dinosaur toy that I ever owned. Was definitely dinosaurs, Scelidosaurus, Polacanthus dinosaur here. And so that's what's shown in the lower right or the lower left corner of the screen there. We've got the actual dinosaur figure with a coloring page by this artist named Cookie Raptor, who is based in the UK. I do recommend it. Check out their shop online and learn some more about them. I've got a link to the website on my web page, warriorfeathercreations.weebly.com. But anyway, so Gluchon is a dinosaur that always had this role of a sage, a mentor, a character that, like the archetype of the sage, was always hidden away somewhere at an incredible distance from, their pupils, and you had to undergo some arduous journey to reach them. And that's basically Gluchon's role in my old stories in the 90s. And this character looked the same as the dinosaur toy: blue body, gray, armored portion. Do I think that's realistic? No, not in the slightest. But I liked the color scheme. I liked the way that I created this character initially. And note that in all of these iterations, the older iterations of this character, they have a cane. So the fact that they were an elder was made clear. The fact that they had this maybe possibly weapon slash mobility aid, this character early on was established this way. And so Gluchon was a character that was always prominent in Iara slash Raptor's storyline. It wasn't until later on when I started to change his character. So from the 90s until the mid 2000s, that's how I perceived this character. And then when I started writing Iara's Crossing, I kind of stayed away from this character for a while. They didn't come back into the story until a little bit later on, so I'm not going to give away anything. This character does appear in a way in my story, but not in the way that you would expect. And so there's a concept art piece above me of this dinosaur character as he appears in the novel. And again, this concept of this dinosaur was clearly a leader in my stories, clearly a wise creature that all the other dinosaurs seemed to follow and fall in line with. That was something that I decided to carry with me into Iara's Crossing, but again, I changed the way this character showed up. And so where exactly Clepsydra comes into the story, her character actually originated a lot later on. So I'm going to get into that character. And again, there is a connection between this character I made and Clepsydra, which you'll learn about when you read the novel for yourself. So on this slide are some more pieces of concept art that depict different ways that Clepsydra looked in the 2018s. So 2018 to 2020, this is how I decided to go with this character and start to really develop this character into her own creature and her own character. And one of the key aspects to Clepsydra is that she shapeshifted. And in my story, I call that shape changing. So she is introduced to you in the prologue of Iara's Crossing. Her story is very sad. It's very sad, it's very dark, it's very complicated. I'm not going to delve too deeply into that because, again, the point is for you to read the story and to find out more about her. But she definitely has been through a lot. And you could learn more about her in the sequel to Iara's Crossing, which I'm drafting now. There's more information that will come to light about who exactly this character was, because even though I give you quite a bit of information about her in the prologue to the story, I don't necessarily explain every detail about this character, because the story is about Iara, not about Clepsydra. But her story, like I said, the reason why she has the appearance that she does is because as an elder avian, she is severely molded, and molded to the point where her feathers are gone. So birds in nature and birds in the wild and in captivity too, when they get sick, some birds, they molt and or they preen themselves to the point where they just have bare skin. They don't recover those feathers in some cases. So sometimes the feathers don't grow back. Uh, and so that's basically what I've shown here in these concept art illustrations, is the fact that, here we have this elderly avian who's disabled, who's sick, who's missing an eye. One of the eyes is replaced by a fossil ammonite. And the significance of that is something that you'll learn about in the story. But essentially, the ammonite and Clepsydra are always connected to one another. Um, this is not only a symbol of her flock and her kin, but this represents a type of magic, a deep ancient magic that somehow she is able to wield, and in her, this magic expresses itself through shape changing. Now, not all avians have this magic ability. Okay, so Clepsydra can. Iara can't. So there's one distinction right there. The other thing is that it seems like the Ammonite can bestow certain magical qualities and powers to only certain types of avians or certain individuals, and not necessarily the collective. So that's something else that I wanted to point out here too. Now, Clepsydra, her story is that basically she flew with her flock to a new location. She was fleeing volcanic activity to the west of the continent that she's on now, and so she fled and made her way south and found herself in basically a paradise amongst a desert environment, and she called that the oasis. And there's, of course, more to her story than that, and like I said many times already, you could read about her in the prologue. Um, but yeah, she's a very interesting character. There's a lot to her, and she has a lot to teach Iara too in the limited time that she has with her. In a way, Clepsydra is channeling like that very matronly, grandmotherly type of energy, that old crone archetype, that very supportive yet distant kind of feel. And also, here's a character that's been through a lot in her own life, and she kind of, in a way, tries to pass this on to the lessons that she's learned onto her proteges, and Iara is one of them. Is technically one of the last, and so whether or not Iara will learn from what Clepsydra has experienced, or be able to wield the magic in a similar kind of way, or whether Iara is going to come up with another way of, fulfilling this prophecy that Clepsydra mentions here and there, along with Moongaze, who I'll get to in the next video. Um, these characters, they kind of pass on their knowledge to Iara in a way. Um, whether or not Iara will take this information and run with it, or whether things are going to change, you'll have to find out in the novel. And exactly, their connection is something, like I said, that I will come back to in the sequel. So this is not the last time that you'll learn about and observe this character in the story. All right, so on this slide, I've got some more illustrations of Ammonites, and that's because that is something that is crucial to Clepsydra's character, and also representing this place called the Oasis that she basically founded, with other avians, of course, but she was like the main ruler of this location. And the Ammonites in my story have a significance beyond being a beautiful fossil and an ubiquitous one. So ammonites are a fossil that are very common in today's world. We can find them in many different localities, many different places around the world. Now, in this story, I exaggerate to a degree, like how many ammonites can be found out of the ground and stuff like that. But understand, when the dinosaurs were walking on the surface of the earth, they could encounter fossil life from previous periods and eras and epochs. So it is possible that fossils were discovered by dinosaurs, whether on purpose or an accident, is remains to be seen, right? But basically, that's what I wanted to emphasize, was that fossils existed then too, and so Iara, though, and Clepsydra both, what unites them is this strange power that exists in these ammonites. And like I said, it varies depending on the user, the person who carries these ammonites, and based on what the ammonite feeds through to these avians. Um, I will say that the power lies within. Okay, first, second, ammonites represent growth. They represent change. They represent flow, going with the flow, moving. So when ammonites lived, they would move up and down the water column, and so they would just literally go with the flow. And that's basically part of a cyclical process of growth that ER and Clepsydra both undergo. But how they undergo that process is different. And again, Clepsydra has one of these ammonite fossils permanently embedded in her eye socket. Now, the story behind that, how she managed to lose her eye and all that, is something that I will not delve into. You're going to have to read the book to find out, because it's a very dark and twisted way that she loses that ability to see. And part of it is that too, where it's this additional sense, and ammonites can imbue a means of elemental power in my story too. So I used a combination of factual information with how these creatures could have been in life, how water flows through the chambers in life, and air as well, and creates this sense of buoyancy. I also pulled from that, and I kind of changed it depending on elemental magic. So there is a touch of elemental magic here involving these ammonites, and how that magic flows through those fossils and into the avians that are marked with them or wear them. That's something that you will have to discover and read in Iara's Crossing in the novel. But I hope that you find this aspect interesting. And this is a big part of the avian culture that Clepsydra introduces anyway. Whether or not these Ammonites represent more than that remains to be seen in the sequel. So in the sequel, I'm going to talk more about how this particular group of organisms was bestowed this magic. How did that happen? And things like that. So you'll learn more about that later. But as far as Iara is concerned, like I said, like she learns a little bit about that from Clepsydra, but most of that learning is by doing rather than by sitting around and listening to stories. There are some stories that Clepsydra does impart to Iara, but most of Clepsydra's story comes from other avians and other creatures. They tell the story to Iara, how she came to be. And it's not necessarily like a one-to-one discussion, which, again, I wanted to add a sense of mystery to this character a little bit more. And like I said, some of that will begin to unravel here in the story, and it'll continue in the sequel. All right, so this is the character sheet for Clepsydra. This is the character sheet that is in the last pages of the novel, 4 Years Crossing. So here we have, on the top, we have Clepsydra as she was in youth, and at the bottom we have her now, as we know her, as an elder. And you can tell there's a huge difference between the feathers then and now. Obviously, she has that ammonite in her eye socket. Unfortunately, I based the coloration of this character on starlings. So European starlings are an invasive species in Southern California, and yet they are very loud and very hard to miss. And they are actually, I honestly find them very beautiful. They take on this feather appearance that mimics stars in the night sky. And so I stuck with that imagery for Clepsydra as well as part of her story too. So you'll learn more about that later on, and I hope that you find that interesting, how I made that connection between the feather color and the environment and what that says about her as a character. But like I said, she's also at the start. She's also similar in appearance to Archaeopteryx, and I did this on purpose. And this is because some of the first birds that we're aware of in the fossil record had a similar appearance to Archaeopteryx. Now, why this is, we're still trying to figure that out. I drew the younger version of her with the feather pants, the longer like feathers. There's some aspects of this, of course, that are not entirely 100% accurate, by the way, just so everybody knows. Again, as I said in previous videos, and as I mentioned on my website and stuff, this is a fantasy novel. So that said, as a fantasy novel, I tend to stray from precision when it comes to illustrating and describing these characters. I leave a lot of that up to you to decide on, some of the final appearance aspects and things. And of course, the science is always changing. So our understanding of the way that these animals are now is going to be vastly different, decades down the line. And that said, I do hope that you find her character interesting. She again is a very sad sort of backstory to her that you'll learn in the prologue to Iara's Crossing, and like I said, you'll find out what happens with this character towards the end of the book. So, in closing, I hope that you found this video installment interesting. I hope that you found this character intriguing. So, Clepsydra is one of many dinosaur characters that I feature in Iara's Crossing. Again, a dinosaur fantasy novel that I wrote this year. And if you would like to support me in this way of me telling these stories about these dinosaurs, if you would like to support my work, my artwork, and my writing, feel free to check out my Indiegogo page in the description and contribute, because you can get a paperback copy of the book before it's released through the Lulu Bookshop, and it's marked up quite a bit, before it's released on my website and through my coffee shop, KOFI Coffee. And also, I'd like to say thank you for checking out this video today. Thank you for watching. If you like this content, feel free to hit the subscribe button, the like button. Feel free to leave a comment as well down in the description below. I do read through your comments and I do appreciate them. And I hope that wherever you are in the world, that you're having a good day, a good night, what have you, whatever time it is that you're happening to watch this video. I hope that things are going okay for you and yours. And again, thank you for checking out this video, learning more about this dinosaur character from Iara's Crossing.